Welcome to 1855 Masterclass. We have an amazing lineup tonight. And before we do anything further, I'm just going to introduce Peter Katz in the house. And if you have not heard of him from today forward, you are going to be following his path. I actually met him a few years ago at a Whitby backyard house party, to be honest, and have followed him ever since. He's an incredible artist. He hails from Montreal. And he's been, for the last 10 years, he's been touring the world promoting his music. He is a JUNO Award, Canadian Screen Award, and two-time Canadian Folk Music Award nominee. He's got 5 albums. He's shared stages and studios with legendary artists. He has been receiving accolades for a long time from so many people that you would know of. And he is also a very gifted storyteller. I am very, very proud to have Peter Katz take this away for you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So nice to be with all of you. I'm also especially excited. I just got a haircut. It's been 3 months, so I just had to start with that because I'm just so excited. As Stephanie mentioned, I grew up in Montreal. I'm actually a Torontonian now. But when I was 18 years old, I moved from Montreal to Toronto. And I had to be out of my place in Montreal on August 31st, but I didn't get the keys to my place in Toronto until September 1st. So I had this 24-hour period of no fixed address. So I had all my stuff in the back of my car, and I drove myself from Montreal to just outside of Toronto. Actually, maybe you know this because it's in your neck of the woods. I drove myself to the Motel 6 on the side of the road in Oshawa. Beautiful, beautiful establishment. And I had this night there. And it was kind of a big deal because I was kind of going from a kid to being a man, it felt like. So I had this night at this Motel 6. The next morning I drove in and I started my life. So fast forward 16 years later, and I found myself in another moment of restart in my life. And I actually found myself of no fixed address for an entire month. So I put myself on tour and did a bunch of shows. And the last night of that tour happened to be in Montreal. And I had all of my stuff in my car because I was of no fixed address. So there I was at the end of the month, once again driving from Montreal to Toronto with all my stuff in the back of my car, needing to start my life over again. And without having really planned it, I decided to drive myself to that same Motel 6 that I had stayed at 16 years earlier. And as I opened the door to my motel room, I was struck by this feeling like I had just walked out of that door a second earlier, like the time between those two moments felt paper thin. And yet, of course, all of these things had happened in my life, and dreams that I'd pursued, and also some of my biggest fears had come true. And yet there I was, and not only did time feel paper thin, but I felt paper thin. And in that moment, as much as I felt kind of lost and overwhelmed, I had this like kind of new part of me that was emerging, which was this sense of resilience, like holy swear word. Like I've been through some things, and yet I'm still here. And it's kind of amazing how in those moments, in our hardest moments, that's often where we really discover what we're made of. So as we're all going through a bit of those moments right now, especially as business owners and entrepreneurs, hopefully this song can be a little reminder of that resilience that we get to discover despite these challenging moments. So, and in fact, because of. So here we go. This is a brand new song. This is the single that I dropped. This is called Paper Thin. I can barely even talk about it now, but I don't know any other way out. I have pushed myself so hard for all these years. Still it's not clear what for. And all the roads I drive no longer lead me home. I could fill an ocean with all that I don't know, and I was safer in the insides of those walls. But that's not all there is. Ooh. I know everything that falls apart. Ooh. Just wasn't ready for life to hit that hard and like the narrow space between the start and the end, or the mirror that is now and then, or the insides that are showing through my skin. The paper thin, and when your biggest fear it ends up coming true, that's when you find out what you have inside of you. And I am braver than I ever could have known. These days have shown that to me. Ooh. I know everything falls apart. Ooh. Just wasn't ready for life to hit that hard and like the narrow space between the start and the end, or the mirror that is now and then, or the insides that are showing through my skin. The paper thin, I feel my eyes adjusting to the dark, and I can see the light of far-off stars. If I let myself get far enough away from the city of our lives, and like the hold I never really have, I'm getting older. It's not all in my hands, but I will not be afraid of the insides that are showing through my skin. I'm paper thin, I'm paper thin now, I'm paper thin now, I'm paper thin. Thank you, everybody. I can feel the virtual clapping, so thank you. I'm going to do one more song for you before the amazing John Warrillow comes up. This is a song that I wrote for one of my biggest heroes, and his name was Oliver Schroer, and Oliver was this amazing Canadian violin player. But upon learning of a terminal cancer diagnosis, Oliver decided that he was going to play this one final show. And he decided to call this show Oliver's last show on his tour of this planet. And he ended up selling out Trinity St. Paul's Church, not too far down the road from here. And about 1,000 people came from all over the world to be in the audience that night. And he got up on this stage and he played his violin for this crowd of people for over 3 hours. And he walked off that stage, and 1 month later, almost to the day, he died. And I was listening to him on CBC promoting this concert, and something that he said in that interview that really struck me is that when the doctors gave him the news that his condition was terminal and incurable, rather than having a feeling of panic, he was surprised to find himself overcome by this feeling of peace. Because he realized that in that moment, that even though he had such a short amount of time left to live, he didn't need to change anything because he was already doing exactly what he wanted to be doing with his life. And I remember being so struck by that, and this was at the very, very beginning of my career. And I remember saying to myself, like, I need to remember this. Like, this is an important message. I'm like, that's the ultimate state for a human being to aspire to be in. I really need to remember that and know that when I'm making decisions in my life, that I'm measuring them against that bar. Am I walking towards that state or am I not? And I've been thinking a lot about this song in this context, because this song has always been a reminder for me to, like, make sure that I remember that I'm alive and I don't have all the time in the world. And in this context of, what we're all going through right now, it's been a reminder that, people keep saying that life is on hold, but this song kind of helps to remind me that, like, no, life isn't on hold. Like, I still only have so many minutes, and so how am I going to make the most of those minutes, even if I can't exactly do all the things that I want to do? And I wanted to play this song especially for a group of business owners and entrepreneurs, because part of the reason that we're extra vulnerable right now is because we're people that have stuck our necks out. We've invested in our businesses, we've kind of followed these dreams, and that's made us more vulnerable. But it's also put us on that path, that same path, I believe, of finding ourselves in that state that Oliver did, of really being risk takers and going after those things that we want to do. And I feel like that risk-taking and that entrepreneurial spirit that has made us vulnerable in these moments is also the thing that's going to help get us through these moments and keep us on that path of living a rich, meaningful, exciting, awesome life. So much respect to all of you as business owners and entrepreneurs. I feel like there's so much overlap between the artist life and what you do. And so this one's for you. And obviously, really, I'm looking forward to John. I'm killing time here as I'm tuning. There it was. All right, so this is called Oliver's Tune. And though I've got my number, I am calm here in the storm, 'cause my hands still are hungry, spirit warm. And in view all around me, my friends have gathered near, and all I've ever needed is right here. But if I look too far ahead of me, I stumble into tragedy, but really it's not sad, you see. 'Cause here I am playing my final song, doing what I've been doing all along. And you can call it courage, or you can call it strong, but really it's just simply carrying on, while amplifying all the good you've been engaging in, with only just a few less days to squeeze all of it in. But if I look too far ahead of me, I stumble into tragedy, but really it's not sad, you see. 'Cause here I am playing my final song, with all of you surrounding me. So when I'm free from gravity, I will know that I was never wrong, doing what I I'm not one to tell people what it is they should do. But if you're asking, then I guess there's one thing I would say to you. Do those things you've always wanted to. Thanks so much, everybody. My name's Peter Katz, and it's been a real pleasure being with you.
Peter, I'm really not sure how I'm supposed to follow that. Thank you so much for sharing your musical talent with us, and really thank you for making this the best Zoom call that I've had all day for sure, and probably since the start of this for this crisis.
My pleasure.
You know, I think what you've shown us is that culture, arts, and particularly music have never been more important to us. And connecting as individuals and as a community, it is just so important. So thanks again. That was just really wonderful.
My great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Your words at the start of the session and your music really resonated with me, and I'm sure many of us, because in some ways it feels like yesterday that we started lockdown, and yet in some ways it feels like we've been here forever and we just can't wait to escape from my basement with this very, very small window. And you know, the kids that are running around and sometimes interrupting these calls. And yet, you know, as you've mentioned, like the time hasn't stopped. We're not on hold, and we've come so far. You mentioned the ability to restart and be resilient at the start of your act. And these are two themes that I'm hearing about on a daily basis in my role with the region of Durham. So pleased to introduce myself. My name is Sonia Salomon, and I oversee business development and investment with Invest Durham. And I've spent the last 100 days or so working closely with the business community, spanning every industry here in the Durham region. And I've had really a front row seat to, in some cases, really heartbreaking stories, but in other cases, really uplifting stories about how businesses in the region have come together. And really, it's been remarkable to see the reaction of the business community and the resilience of residents in our community in this time, and really seeing how much we've rallied around local businesses and our communities here in the region. So in a recent podcast, our special guest tonight noted that bad things happen to good businesses, and that fortunes are made and lost not by what happens to us, but by how we react. And I think that's really, really telling. And I think, you know, I've seen a lot of examples of that. And I think it's quite timely that we hear from John Warrillow, who is with us here tonight. A sought-after speaker, John has keynoted all over Canada and the US at events like Fortune Magazine's Growth Summit and Inc. Magazine's 5000 Conference. He's authored 2 best-selling books, hosts Built to Sell Radio, ranked one of the world's 10 best podcasts for business owners, then one which I subscribe to, and founded the Value Builder System, which has helped more than 47,000 business owners improve their company value by 71%. So for the last few months, we've certainly all been caught in the middle of a chaotic storm, change and uncertainty. And just like in any storm, when the storm subsides, which we're starting to see now with stage 2 here across the GTA, it's time to assess the damage. That time is now. So sharing what considerations are required as you go forward, please welcome to our virtual stage, John Warrillow. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Sonia. It's great to be with you, and it's such a way to warm up the audience to hear Peter talk. I was really or to Peter play and sing, and the stories really resonated with me as well. So I'm really grateful for that as an introduction, and to spend some time with you, because passion is something that's important to me. I spent the last 10 years or so with one mission, which is to help level the playing field for business owners as they approach their exit. A lot of businesses right now are thinking about, how do you restart? And what I want to do today is talk about how do you restart with a specific goal, which is to build the value of your company. And that's really what I've been focused on and passionate about for the last 10 years. I wrote a book that Sonia mentioned called Built to Sell back in 2011. It's really about how do you build the value of your company I followed it up with a book called The Automatic Customer, which is about recurring revenue, one of the accelerants to the value of your company. And then coming out later this year, I've got a book coming out called The Art of Selling Your Business, which is really about harvesting the value of your company. And I think when you look through those 3 books, if you see there's a sort of common lens or common vein that runs through all 3, which is really about helping you level the playing field as you approach your exit. Because now more than ever, there are unfortunately a lot of bad actors in the world who are looking to prey on businesses in a time of need. And I was reminded of that recently. I did a podcast with a woman based in actually Portland, Oregon. I'm based in Toronto, but Anna Shode is based in Portland, Oregon. But I think I wanted to share it with you as a bit of a cautionary tale with what happens when you don't focus on building and rebuilding the value of your company as your shining light. Most company owners think about profit and loss or revenue as their primary goal. And my goal today is, as you restart your business, to think about a slightly more nuanced approach, to think about building value as opposed to just revenue or profit. And so I'll tell you the story of Anna as she told it to me on my podcast. You'd be familiar with Freshie, good Toronto-based business. Freshie is a leader in this whole salad craze where many of us are buying salads as meals. And Anna realized this when she was living in San Francisco, and she went through a divorce and she moved to Portland, Oregon. And so she started a salad company called Garden Bar. And, through hard work and tenacity, she built the company up to 1 location and successful. And she was approached by a quote unquote advisor and investor who wanted to take the concept and have Anna build from 1 store to 10 restaurants in Portland, Oregon. Anna, not necessarily knowing a lot about the value of her company and some of the mechanics of an investment, she looked at the investment prospectus that was offered to her and she agreed to it. In that investment prospectus, this advisor/investor had included something called a liquidity preference. They were essentially preferred shares that they were basically buying from Anna. And in a preferred share, the return goes, when you sell your company, first and foremost to preferred shareholders. And in this secret little clause, she agreed to a 2.5x liquidity preference, meaning on a liquidity event, those investors were guaranteed 2.5 times their money. Well, about 9 months after signing this agreement, she got an acquisition offer from Seattle's fastest growing salad company. She agreed to it. About 2 days before closing, her lawyer turned to her and said, this little 2.5x clause that you've signed, that's going to wash you out of all of your equity. Even though you've built this 10-store franchise, this amazing business, by signing that agreement, you've basically wiped out all of your value of your company. She decided to go ahead with it to keep her investors whole in return for what's called an earnout, which is an opportunity to make money in the future based on goals the acquirer gives you. That was in November of 2019. And of course, in March 2020, we all know what happened to businesses across the world. Restaurants in particular were shut down. Anna's 10-store business was shut down and she was left with nothing, even though she built one of Portland's fastest growing restaurant chains in a very exciting new segment. And I tell you that story, and if you want to listen to it, you can go to Built to Sell and grab it. It's one of the most recent episodes. But I tell you that story as a little bit of a cautionary tale, saying that as you restart your business, there are some fundamental questions that I think you should be asking that really drive at the heart of the value of your company. Are you building and rebuilding your company and focused on your revenue or your sales or your profitability, which are all good goals, but I'm here to suggest that you take a different view and that you build the value of your company beyond anything else. That's something Anna, I think, wished she had done when she went through a personal crisis. And I think it's what everybody on this call should think about as you think about restarting your business. So I think there are essentially 7 questions that you can ask yourself before restarting your business with a view of building your value, not just your revenue. Because as Sonia mentioned in the beginning, we've just gone through in Ontario, we're still going through it, frankly, but hopefully on the other side of it now, what many would consider a disaster of epic proportions. And whenever we experience a disaster in our personal lives, thinking about a flood of your home or a fire, for example, would you rebuild what you had before the disaster struck? Or would you build the home of your dreams, what you've always imagined you wanted? I think that's what's on the table right now for everyone on this call. It's an opportunity to reinvent yourself when the inertia, the winds, the forces of nature are not taking you in a certain direction. You know, once business restarts in Ontario and we really get going again, inertia will take hold again, and the sales of the wind in our sails will start to take us in a specific direction. Customers will ask us for a specific product. Employees will want a specific working environment. And before that all takes hold, I think it's an opportunity. If we think about it as a glass 3/4 full or a silver lining, it's an opportunity for us to pull up and say, what is the company that I really want to build? What is the way that I can maximize the value that I derive from this company? Not just the sales or the profits, but the value that I ultimately garner from this company. Because I think it's a really unique opportunity. For many of us, as we grow companies, in good times, we kind of go about building products and services in a bit of a patchwork quilt. Oftentimes, it's based on what customers are asking us for, right? And we start to build our company based on customer input. And after a while, we pull up, and you may find yourself offering a hodgepodge of products and services, some of which you're differentiated offering, others of which perhaps you're not. And it's really an opportunity now, before we restart in earnest in Ontario, what products and services you really want to focus on. And my proposition to you is to focus on the products and services that are most likely to drive the value of your company. And there's an immutable law of value when it comes to business valuation. I know we've got a lot of SaaS companies on the phone today, a lot of technology companies. And this immutable law is the same whether you run a software as a service company or a car dealership. And the immutable law is this: when an investor looks at your company and thinks about whether they should invest or make an outright acquisition of your company, they make the supposition, or the immutable law that they are committed to not breaking, is thou shalt not pay for what we can do ourselves. The idea here is that when an investor, or in fact acquirer, looks at your business, they're looking at some sort of strategic asset that they want to acquire. And the only way they're going to make that acquisition of your company is if they believe what you have is something they could not easily replicate. By contrast, if what you sell is a patchwork of products and services, one or two of which are differentiated, but many are simply commodities, they're unlikely to place the same value on your company than someone who looks at your business and wants all of what you've built. Let me give you an example, because I think I want to go beyond the esoteric and give you a very kind of concrete example of how we value companies. First, I'll start with how most entrepreneurs, how we mostly value companies, and then I'll move to how acquirers typically value companies. You know, when I talk to entrepreneurs and people like yourself, typically we value businesses by looking at our profit and loss statement, right? And we say, okay, I'm just making this up. My annual revenue is $5 million. My cost of goods sold is $2 million. Our gross profit, therefore, is $3 million. Our expenses are 2.2. Therefore, before tax, we generated $800,000 of profit in this hypothetical example. Well, for most of us as business owners, we think the value of our company is some sort of multiple on that profit. And maybe you've heard in your industry or in your line of business that there's an industry standard multiple. Let's imagine that this fictitious owner has heard that the multiple in their area is 4 times pre-tax profit. Therefore, that owner is thinking that their business is worth $3.2 million. That's the way most of us as entrepreneurs perceive the value of our company. Acquirers, however, based on the immutable law of acquisitions and business valuation, may look at your business through a different lens. They may see the same $5 million of annual revenue, and instead of breaking it down by profitability, they may start to look at, and in fact, I would argue almost will definitely look at your annual revenue and break it out by your product line, that hodgepodge or patchwork quilt of products and services that we all offer in business. And they will go and look at the various products that you sell. Imagine this company has $3 million of its revenue coming from one product or service, another $850,000 from another product, $750,000 from a third product, and $400,000 from a fourth product. When this acquirer looks at valuing this business, they're going to say to themselves, which of these products do we really value and which ones are largely commodities? And when an acquirer looks at your business, they will often discount, perhaps even to zero, the value of your commodity products, because they're going to make the conclusion that by lowering their price, they could probably pick up most of your business in the area of the commodities that you sell, the products you sell by the inch, by the pound, by the RFP or the quote or the hour, all those things that they could easily pick up by lowering their price. They will largely place a deep discount on the value of that revenue. They may, however, look at what it is that makes you truly unique, that one thing or that one product or that one service for which you are truly differentiated, and place a very high valuation. They may, in this hypothetical example, look at the $400,000 of revenue you derive from that one product as highly differentiated and place as much as maybe even a 2 or 3. If you're a SaaS company, it could be a 4 or 5 times multiple of revenue on that one product or service. In this case, they take the $400,000 you derive from that one differentiated product and apply a 2x multiple on revenue, and you're left with a business worth $800,000. The problem is that we spend time, energy restarting all the products that we sold, using up cash and resources and time, and when perhaps even just one of those products is really where you can focus. And now in these times in Ontario where for a lot of us, you don't have the luxury of extra money, extra time, extra people, extra resources, we have to be very focused on what we restart. And so what I would argue is to look at whatever product and service for which you are truly differentiated, that is where the place to really restart. And it begs the question, okay, well, what do acquirers care about? What do people who acquire or invest in small, medium-sized businesses really value? If they don't value my whole entire business, what do they value? Well, they value distribution channels that would be hard to build on their own. They value brands that take years to build. They value a customer base that would be hard to acquire. They value a strategic location. If you happen to have a great location at a corner that's a high traffic location, they value proprietary technology, employees who are hard to recruit. Again, a differentiated product or service, even organic search juice is something acquirers care about. These are the things that truly make your business desirable to an acquirer, rather than all of your revenue. And so again, I really want to impart the idea tonight that if you're sitting there thinking about really restarting and accelerating the growth and restart plans of your business, and you're tempted to just grab revenue from wherever you can find it, I go back to the story of Anna showed and say, well, maybe it would be better to have a smaller, more nimble company that's highly valued by acquirers rather than a larger, sloppy product or mix that perhaps is really just running on a treadmill. And so I give you the story of Damian James. So I mentioned this podcast I do. It's called Built to Sell Radio. I do interview a different entrepreneur every week, and it's global. So I interview different entrepreneurs from around the world. Damian happens to be from Melbourne, Australia. Damian is a podiatrist by training. So he helps people with their feet. And he built a foot care clinic. And he came up with the idea of doing foot doctor work, helping people in retirement homes who struggle to get into a traditional, retail location or an office tower location of a podiatry clinic. He said, what if I brought my clinics to these retirement homes? What if I structured them so I did foot care in retirement homes? Well, he built up a network of retirement homes from all over Australia. He built his company up to a little over $11 million in revenue when a company called Zenitast came knocking. Zenitast had more than $70 million in revenue. They did different services in retirement homes. They did optometry and a variety of different other services. And they looked at Damian's company and said, we can plop this podiatry service into our suite of different medical offerings that we offer in podiatry homes. So with acquiring Dimple, they were able to take a product that was differentiated and branded and put it into their network of retirement homes. Equally, they were able to expand their network of retirement homes because Damian had built out his own network of retirement homes. They paid $13.4 million for Damian's business. And it would never have sold had Damian taken the route that most podiatrists would have taken, right? Which is offering a variety of services through a retail location. What he did was focus on the one thing that made his company valuable. In this case, his relationships with these retirement homes. And he built it out to the point where he focused on just that. And so right now is a really unique opportunity, I think. Again, while the storm clouds are starting to part and you're really rethinking about what to restart in your business, it's an opportunity to prune the products or services that are taking up a lot of your mental energy, the distribution channels that maybe are taking up a lot of your cash, and really prune them down to what exactly makes your company valuable. Not necessarily bigger in terms of annual revenue or profitability, but valuable in the eyes of an acquirer. And what acquirers value today more than ever is something that makes your business unique. One thing that makes you hard to compete with, what acquirers call your competitive advantage. What it is that you are put on this planet to do is the one thing that they will buy and invest significantly in. And so I'm going to end my talk tonight with 7 questions I want you to ask yourself before you restart your company. And the first is very simple. What problem is your business trying to solve? Every great business tries to solve a specific problem. And so what is the problem? What is the customer problem you are setting out to solve as you restart your business? And here's a hint. If there's more than one problem, that's not enough. You've got to differentiate and segment down to the point where you've got one problem you're trying to solve, in my view. The second question I want you to answer is who is most affected by this problem? And this is the process of niching down, usually way beyond your comfort zone, right? We talk about addressable markets and having a wide sort of segment of the audience that you can go after. And while that's great in times, good times, when capital is unlimited and people are willing to buy and there's lots of money to be made, in times of struggle, you really have to focus down on what is the one thing that you do better than anybody else, what is the problem you're trying to solve, and who is the person who feels that problem most acutely. Question number 3. What does your company do to solve this problem? In essence, what is it that you're planning to offer? There's a problem out there in the marketplace that someone feels acutely. What are you going to offer to help alleviate that pain point? The fourth question is arguably the most important of the 7. And that is, what gives you an enduring competitive advantage? What is your secret sauce? What makes you difficult to compete with? What makes you different? Again, mergers and acquisitions professionals call it your enduring competitive advantage. That's a bunch of lingo for really what makes you special. Because when an acquirer looks at buying your business, they're having a conversation when you're not in the room. The conversation is, should we buy or invest in this business? Or should we just compete with them? Should we just lower the price and go pick up all their revenue? Their answer to that question will be, they will buy you if what you've built is differentiated, that it's not a Me Too product or service that is highly commoditized in the marketplace. So I believe question 4 is the one to spend the most time on and really get right. What is your enduring competitive advantage? Question number 5, what does the world look like when you've solved this problem? It's another way of saying, what is your vision? As you look out on the horizon 5-10 years from now, what is your vision for the world when this problem is no longer feeling so acute in the world? Next, question 6 is, how will you know when you've solved that problem? Vision is about an illustration. Sonia talked about artistry, and Peter talked about the merger of an artistry with business. And I believe having a vision is somewhat artistry, right? It's being able to paint a picture of a world once the problem you've envisioned has been solved. But the next question goes from art to science. What is the objective measure you will use to know when you've achieved that vision? What is the quantifiable, objective mission statement of your company so that you know when you've reached that goal? And then finally, surprisingly, it's the last question, how are you going to make money? That's not where you want to start when you're thinking about restarting your business. It's really about, what is the customer pain point? Who feels it most acutely? But at the end, once you've done those 6 answers, we obviously need to make money. And so you've got to answer the question, what is your business model? How will you make money doing this? It's something that we do all day long. Sonia mentioned the company I run. It's called Value Builder. We work with companies, taking them through this process of building the value of their business. There's 12 unique modules, but the first thing we do is take them through this thing called Vision Builder. And we eat our own dog food, meaning we have also done it for our company. So let me show you what it looks like when you actually complete the Value Builder, Vision Builder tool, answering these 7 questions. So again, the first question that we answered is, what's the problem in the world? Small business owners, like Sonia, not like Sonia, like Anna showed from Portland, Oregon, are getting cheated when they go to sell their company. And this pain point is most acutely felt by companies with 1 to 10 million in annual revenue, because they just don't have the same infrastructure, the same advisors, the same C-level executives on staff. What do we do to solve this problem? We provide tools and content and advice. What gives us an enduring competitive advantage? Well, we've got data. 55,000 businesses have gone through the Value Builder system. What does the world look like when we've solved the problem? Well, we've leveled the playing field for small business owners. They're no longer being taken advantage of. We'll know when we've been successful when we've helped 1 million companies build more valuable businesses. Our business model happens to be that we license this system to professional advisors, accounting firms, M&A firms, law firms, et cetera. So that's sort of our business model. So I wanted to show you that, just so that once you've answered this 7-question structure, you can put it together in a bit of a one-pager that helps give you that, again, shining light, northern light, the sense of where you're going as a company as you plan to restart your business. So listen, that's what I wanted to share with you today. I'm so honored to share the stage with Peter and try to provide the science and the art in one kind of package tonight. I know that Jennifer, you were going to kind of lead a little bit of a Q&A for folks who wanted to have a question or two. I'm happy to take them and take the questions in whatever order you have them, Jennifer.
That's great. Thank you so much, John. I think that we're all feeling very lucky that we've had the time to have a conversation with you where we're talking about how we reinvent to restart. It's a critical topic right now. Everyone's in the phase that they know that change needs to happen or it has already happened, but we don't always feel like we've got the insights to do the how. How do we do that? So thank you for sharing a lot of that critical information from us. My name is Jennifer Alsop. I am part of the Strategic Partnerships team at Ontario Tech University. So I'm not a business owner, but given everything that's happened, even a university, we've had to reinvent to restart. So we are not going back to class in the fall. And so what does that look like? And how do you still deliver a quality education? So everything you've shared with this group is relevant to all types of businesses and organizations. And I'm sure a lot of people will have questions to kind of maybe hone in on some of those things. But I wanted to say thank you. And a big focus for the university has always been about advancing the discovery and application of knowledge to accelerate economic growth. So the founders that you've talked about, and some who've had, some falls along the way and others, but they're very much like the up and coming founders, the student entrepreneurs that the university is responsible to guide, educate, share, and certainly a lot of the tools and things that you've talked about today, the way of framing it, the vision and the value builder is something I'm excited to take back to a lot of our students who go through our Brilliant Catalyst program, because that is exactly what they're hoping to do in their future. So thank you for that. I'm excited to take that back. And a lot of traditional business models have been compromised. So being able to have some guidelines on how to look at this and in a way that is, I know I feel a bit motivated. It's hard, it's been hard, but you're motivating people to reinvent at a time where there's a lot of fear and people could just as easily stick to what they know and where the comfort is. But with some thoughts from yourself and the book that I know everyone who's been involved tonight is going to be receiving an ebook with some follow-up through Stephanie, so they can kind of take that and keep that a little bit closer. And I know some of Peter's songs are also going to be shared with our audience tonight as well in that package. So hopefully you'll look forward to that. So again, thank you for giving all of us this opportunity, giving us the clarity and the motivation that I mentioned. And we're inviting everyone to stick around. Like we mentioned, I see some questions already kind of starting to pop in, and I'll kind of let Stephanie kind of take over some of that. But thank you, everyone. And I wanted to let everyone know that they can put the next masterclass event in their calendar, August 6th, with our guest, Todd Stottlemyre. If anyone can remember the Jays winning the World Series, that name will sound familiar. And again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to hear from you tonight.
No problem.
Thanks a lot, Jennifer. And John, I've got some questions that are coming in from the audience. So awesome. Sue Sutcliffe, she's a veteran entrepreneur in our community, lovely, lovely gal. She wants to know if you see any trends in acquiring businesses.
Sorry, Stephanie, your phone just dropped a little bit. Any trends in which?
Do you see different kinds of trends forming in acquiring businesses? Like what kinds of businesses are being a focus for acquirers? Yeah.
Obviously, software as a service companies are always very desirable among acquirers. And so that's going to be a big sector for sure. A lot of private equity companies right now are making acquisitions, and that's also another major area of new capital inflow, where private equity groups are looking to buy businesses, in particular ones that add value to their other investments. And so we see a lot of acquisitions. For example, I have a friend who runs a private equity group that is buying pharmacies. And so that's a really hot segment right now, where there's a roll-up. And so I think what you might do is, if you're wanting to know about what's sort of hot and what industries people are looking at, follow the private equity groups, because they tend to be ones that are sort of on the leading edge of what people are interested in buying. So right now, private equity groups are doing roll-ups in digital marketing companies. They're doing roll-ups in pharmacies. They're doing roll-ups in dental practices. So there's a lot of these roll-ups that are being underwritten, if you will, by private equity groups. That's probably a place to look. Obviously, SaaS companies. I know a lot of folks in your network, Stephanie, are SaaS companies. That's a perennial area that is hot and is very hot, obviously, right now. I think the other segment that that intuitively probably is an area that we would expect to see a lot of activity in, is anything that allows people to work from home. And although many of us are, many will go back to sort of an office setting, many won't. The banks are on the record as saying that roughly 40% of their staff will be able to work from home permanently in Toronto. And so that means there's going to be a lot of people working from home. So anything like network infrastructure, or I happen to be an investor. This is not an investment. This is not intended to be a stock promotion, but I happen to be an investor in Peloton, because Peloton allows you to work out from home. And I think these are sorts of businesses that unfortunately are going to be probably quite popular acquisition targets as this pandemic drags on.
Yeah, well, and one of the things, like, it's just this whole shift, I remember Deloitte years ago started the agile workplace and allowing their employees to work from home. And they were the trailblazer in that. And you could go and tour their facility and see what that would look like. And now, it's so, commonplace. But further to that question, she also mentioned, can you say a couple of the top private equity groups that would be worth following in Canada that you just off the top of your head?
None of them would be household names. I would actually Google it. And don't limit yourself to Canada. I think private equity is very much global, and they don't think of necessarily geographic borders. So I would definitely not limit yourself by Canada. In fact, given the slight depreciation in the Canadian dollar, the US dollar is going to go further for them. So US-based private equity groups are going to be equally good acquirers of Canadian companies. So I think, there's just hundreds. Private equity is like one of these, there are very big private equity groups, but most of them are niche boutique companies with 2 or 3 employees. So they're not household names. So I would Google your industry and private equity roll up as an example.
That's excellent advice. So we have a question from Kristen Maramudo from Spark Angels Network. And she said, what is your take or advice that you provide to try to get founders and investors or acquirers on the same page to make sure the deal satisfies both sides?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Because obviously owners have oftentimes an inflated view of what their company is worth, and acquirers want to invest in or buy businesses for the lowest possible dollar. I've spent a career now on the side of the entrepreneur, right? So I take a somewhat negative view to acquirers, and I want to defend the rights of business owners. So I'll give you my response to how to make sure you maximize the value of your company. I'm not too worried about providing advice for how to do the opposite, minimizing the value. So look, the secret, I think, to increasing the value of your company is multiple offers. The most common mistake that small business owners make when they're either raising money or selling their company is getting sucked into what's called a proprietary deal. And a prop deal is a deal where the acquirer is negotiating with you alone. And quite quickly, they will have you sign a letter of intent, which has a no shop clause. And that means you give up the ability to negotiate with other people while they do their due diligence. And the worst, trick in the book is retrading on the back of a no shop clause. What that means is they get you, they say, we're going to buy your business. I'll just make up the numbers. We're going to buy your business for $1 million. Let's just for fun. And then they have you sign a no shop clause, which means that you can't negotiate with anybody else. And then at the end of due diligence, they say, oh, we found something. They often manufacture something, and now we're only willing to spend $700,000 to buy your business. And that process is called retrading. And at that point, you've given up the right to negotiate with anybody else, and you've mentally sort of committed to selling your business. And as a result, it's very hard to walk away. And so the antivenom to that is to make sure that before you sign a no shop clause or an LOI, letter of intent, you have a bidding war. You get a multiple bidders for your business. And the good news is if you are looking to raise money or have private equity buy your company, most private equity companies look for exactly the same things in the business they invest in. So in other words, if you're attractive to one private equity company, you'll be attractive to lots of private equity companies. And so what you want to do is make sure that you get multiple bidders for your business. And that ensures that when you do sign your eventual no shop clause, the acquirer knows that you've got a lineup of people that you could sell your business to if they were to try to retrade. And that's essentially the essence of making sure that you get full value for your company.
Amazing. I think the final question would be regarding those seasoned, weary entrepreneurs. They've been business owners for a long time.
Yeah.
And they don't know if they're going to be able to withstand another COVID, if you will. And so where would those guys go if they've got a successful company that they've been running and they've got a successful track record of generating revenue, their books are good, their value is good, where would they go to source potential acquirers?
Yeah, I mean, really, you want to hire an M&A firm, a mergers and acquisitions firm. That's their job, right? So it's not what I do, by the way. I cannot help you on that. But there are lots of good M&A firms in Toronto and around the world, and their job is to create competitive attention. And most of them, the good ones, will have a database of private equity groups. They'll also do a considerable amount of research to figure out who the strategic acquirers would be in your segment. So they're going to put together a list of potential buyers and take them through an entire process. So I often say that selling your business is not a DIY project. I would not for a second do it yourself. This is arguably going to be the most important transaction of your life. And if you've been lucky enough to build, as you described, Stephanie, a successful business with profits and good books, the last thing you want to do is mess up, the final mile. So yeah. I think it makes sense to find an M&A firm, a mergers acquisitions firm, to represent you in that transaction.
Amazing. So I have one other question.
Sure.
If you have time for just a quick one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So one of the other mistakes, this is actually from Sonia, who was early on.
I was going to jump in, but.
Oh, yeah, you know what? You can ask your question.
John, right now, in my experience and working with a lot of businesses right now, entrepreneurs, small business owners, they are very emotionally attached to what they're doing, and the business really has been built around them as sort of the core holding the business together. And I think I'm seeing that, that emotional attachment to the business be even more heightened during this crisis. What is some advice that you can give around that? Because I note that you in some of your other literature, you note that building the business too much around yourself and the reliance around yourself is a big mistake. What are some things that owners can do to sort of mitigate that during this time of crisis?
Yeah, I've seen it. You go through it, I think, first of all, you make a great point, Sonia, that business is very personal. For small business owners, it's not just dollars and cents, it's very personal. And for a lot of them, they've just gone through a period of tremendous trauma. And so it would be equivalent. We believe that they've gone through almost a form of mild PTSD, if you can believe it. I mean, we saw it after 9/11. We saw it after the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, that business owners went through a real shock to the system. And I think we're seeing it here again, because for many of them, this is their baby. And it's very troubling to them personally, and they become very emotionally attached. The other thing, in a practical way, is what many owners have done is gone right back into doing jobs that they haven't done in years, right? Because they've hired people to do work around them, but they've either had to let those people go in some cases, or those people have left for health reasons, or they're managing the health of a loved one, for example. And so they're doing jobs that they haven't done in years. And so it's a real challenge. Practically, what I would do, or what I would recommend to any business owner, is to do your TVR. TVR stands for teachable, valuable, repeatable. And what that means is you put all your products and services on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper in front of you, and you rate them on a scale of 0 to 10 on how teachable they are to your employees, valuable they are to your customers, and repeatable, meaning to what extent your customers have a repeatable need for that product or service. Score them out of 10, and then take the lowest scoring products and services that you offer today and consider stopping offering them. Because as emotionally fulfilling they might be for you personally to deliver, they're not actually building the value of your company, and they're making it more and more dependent on you personally. And eventually you're going to reach a point where you'll plateau. Your top line revenue won't be able to go beyond a certain threshold because your business is too dependent on you. So it's called your TVR, teachable, valuable, repeatable. The other thing I would suggest you do is, and we've done a bunch of research. We launched a tool called Prescore. If you're interested, you can check it out, prescore.com. It's about why business owners often regret selling their company. And Prescore is driven by 5 major pieces of research, but one of them is the fact that most businesses leave companies as opposed to go to something else. So they're frustrated with Justin Trudeau, Doug Ford, they're frustrated with employees or regulation, and they want to sell their company. But the happiest business owners not only have push factors like that, but they also have pull factors, meaning there's something they want to go to. They want to learn to play guitar as well as Peter. They want to go travel. They want to start another business, whatever it is they want to do. The healthiest exits are ones that do as much thinking about their pull factors as their push factors. So hopefully that answers your question, Sonia.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no worries.